certain mysteries are mysteries no more. Thanks to scientific tools that perhaps didn't exist at the time of the occurrence, investigators have been able to figure out the solutions to many earlier puzzles. Sometimes the researchers simply get lucky, thanks to a deathbed confession or stumbling across a clue that everyone else missed. Here are the 6 unsolved mysteries that cannot be explained. You're welcome. Number 1. Was Umbrella Man involved in the JFK assassination? One of the weirdest enigmas of the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas was the presence of Umbrella Man. This blurry figure is seen in photographs raising a black umbrella along the presidential route, even though the sky was clear. Some saw him as proof of a conspiracy, an advanced man who was signaling the sniper. Others suspected that he might actually be an assassin himself, firing a poison dart gun concealed in his parasol. But when the U.S. House of Representatives reopened the JFK investigation in the late 1970s, a 53-year-old Dallas warehouse manager named Louis Stephen Wick came forward and testified that he was Umbrella Man. Granted, his explanation was a bit bizarre. Wick disliked JFK's father, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Kingdom Joseph P. Kennedy, whom he faulted for supporting British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's appeasement policies toward Hitler. Chamberlain's trademark was his ever-present umbrella, and Witt chose that day to brandish a big, conspicuous one in an effort to needle the president. He brought along a visual aid to the hearing, a battered black umbrella that he claimed was the one he'd used that day. A committee staffer popped it open to reveal that it didn't contain a weapon. Witt added, "If the Guinness Book of World Records had a category for people doing the wrong thing at the wrong time in the wrong place, I would be no." Number 2. How were the pyramids built? Back in the late 1960s and early 1970s, proponents of the hypothesis that human civilization had been jump-started by extraterrestrial visitors pointed to the Egyptian pyramids as persuasive evidence. The ancient Egyptians could not have moved those massive multi-ton stone blocks with just muscle power, they argued, and suggested that alien anti-gravity technology was a more plausible explanation. Fortunately, in 2014, University of Amsterdam physicists materialized to rescue us from paperback pseudoscience. By analyzing an ancient tomb drawing, they figured out that a large team of workers could have hauled the giant stone blocks on a sled and poured water on the sand in their path to reduce the friction and make it possible to drag the blocks to the pyramid. A small amount of water would cause the sand to become glued together and create a sort of paved road. Other researchers also have suggested that the Egyptians used clay as a lubricant, and it may be that they used more than one method. Number 3. What causes the sailing stones to move? Since the 1940s, people have been scratching their heads about the apparently strange goings-on in a dry lakebed in Death Valley called the Racetrack Playa. There, every 10 years or so, stones as big as 700 pounds mysteriously seem to move around on their own, leaving long tracks behind them in the parched desert surface. Over the years, various explanations, from dust devils to films of slippery algae, have been proposed, but none of them seem too convincing. Finally, though, in 2011, researchers from Scripps Institution of Oceanography at the University of California, San Diego decided to solve the enigma. Since the National Park Service wouldn't allow them to attach GPS devices to the rocks themselves, they brought in 15 similarly sized pieces of stone and monitored them. It took 2 years, but they finally got the answer. In wintertime, the playa sometimes fills up with a thin layer of water from rainfall, which freezes overnight and forms thin sheets of ice. When the sun comes out the next day, the ice melts and cracks into panels that light winds then blow across the ice, carrying the rocks with them. But the stones typically slide at a speed of only a few inches per second, slowly enough that visitors can't really see the movement from a distance. Number 4. What caused the Tunguska blast in 1908? On June 30, 1908, a fireball streaked through the Siberian sky, followed by an enormous explosion that leveled 830 square miles of remote forest. Scientists later calculated that the Tunguska event, named after a nearby river, released an amount of energy 1,000 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945, and enough to kill 80 million trees. Weirdly, no crater was ever found. It took researchers until 1927 to reach the remote site, and the inability to find a clear-cut impact crater or pieces of a meteor led to some fantastic theory, including scenarios involving antimatter and UFOs. Others suspected that Earth had been struck by a comet. Since a comet is basically a ball of ice, it wouldn't have left a trace. But in 2007, a team of Italian researchers used acoustic imaging to identify the crater, which turned out to be in a lake 5 miles north of the spot originally identified by scientists. Ukrainian researchers then proved that Tunguska was, in fact, caused by a meteor, according to a 2013 article in Planetary and Space Science. They analyzed samples of peat dating from that summer and found it contained fragments of minerals found in meteorites, as well as lonstellate, a substance known to form from shock waves following an explosion. Just as significant, the combination of all these elements was nearly identical to a meteor impact site in Arizona. Number 5. How did King Richard III die? The English monarch Richard III, whom Shakespeare portrayed as a megalomaniacal, malevolent hunchback, is one of the most famous villains in history. But while we've long known that Richard met defeat and apparently suffered his demise at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, it remained a mystery exactly how he died. Was he killed in battle? And if so, what happened to his body, which was never found and identified? After more than 500 years, those questions were finally answered. In 2012, an old grave was discovered under a parking lot in Leicester, England, and 5 months later, DNA tests confirmed that the bones buried there belonged to Richard III. Additionally, in a 2014 study published in The Lancet, researchers revealed that forensic evidence showed that Richard had suffered 11 wounds, including 9 blows to the skull. The lack of defensive wounds on his arms or hands led researchers to conclude that he had lost his helmet or removed it during the fighting, and then was killed either in sustained combat with an opponent or else had been set upon by multiple attackers. They also found that while Richard had a spinal deformity, he did not have a withered arm or a limb, as Shakespeare depicted him. Number 6. Why did the Mayan civilization collapse? For a long time, people have puzzled about one of the freakiest societal collapses in human history. Why did the Maya people abandon dozens of cities they'd built in the Yucatan Peninsula in the 700 seconds or 800 seconds C, and allow what had been a highly developed civilization to turn into ruins? Some have theorized that the Maya were probably defeated in battle by rival peoples, or that the ruling class was overthrown in a peasant revolt. Others have advanced more outlandish explanations, such as an invasion by UFOs. But in a study published in 2012, Arizona State University researchers, who analyzed archaeological data with an eye to figuring out environmental conditions in the Mayan heyday, found evidence to substantiate a theory first advocated by historian Jared Diamond in his 2005 book Collapse. The Maya, the researchers discovered, had burned and chopped down so much of the forests that they had altered the land's ability to absorb solar radiation, which in turn made clouds and rainfall scarce. That exacerbated a naturally occurring drought and caused erosion and soil depletion, which caused agriculture to fail. With less food available, workers were forced to leave the lowland cities to avoid starvation, and everything collapsed as a result. We hope you enjoyed our list of the unsolved mysteries that cannot be explained. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for interesting videos.